hope all is well. We is back, okay? We is back. I know that's not proper English, but it's going to be proper English for me today, okay? I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about our topic today. Getting my stuff pulled up here. Thank you to everyone who voted. I think it was about 12 of you guys that voted. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. My break was great. Even though I won't say it's not wasn't long enough, I feel like I didn't necessarily like it was kind of in spots when it came to the break. So, but anywho, it worked out though. I'm perfectly fine. I'm refreshed, renewed. That's all that matters, right? Um, Tonight, I'm excited to discuss our topic. It's a loaded topic, but I'm taking a mindfulness approach. So, this may or may not be what you expected tonight, but nonetheless, I hope it's helpful because I think when I think about healing from unhealed parents, especially as adults, because let's be honest, this is going to be more about for adults. If you are underage, this one's not for you. This is for people who are, I would say, 18, 20 plus and are trying to navigate life, but have some underlying patterns that they're concerned about concerning their relationship with parents. So that's what who this live is for. I must give my disclaimer. All right. Um, but it's for us to be a little bit more mindful about those patterns and things that are coming up for us. Hi, Hiru, welcome in. And knowing what to do with that, because a lot of times we'll see these different things, right? We may see these different patterns, or we may pick out these things and not necessarily know what the next step should be. It's just something that's just in the background. It's just something that's there. So that's what this live is for us to kind of talk through that, how to become more mindful of those things and given like practical action items that you can take away from our live today to help you along the way. So I hope this is helpful. If this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I'm a certified mindfulness coach, also a therapist, emerging therapist in training. And this live is, well, not just this live, this channel is about all things mindfulness, mindful living. We do have a plethora of meditations and breath work on the channel, but also we do weekly lives on topics that you guys vote on. And I just give you some additional insight from a mindfulness perspective. There are some therapy things that I'll throw in there here and there, but this is mostly from a mindfulness perspective. So again, I hope this is helpful. Again, if this is your first time, make sure to like the live, make sure to share the live with anybody that you can think can benefit from this live. And subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, why not? Please do. And again, I hope this is helpful. Tonight, we're talking about mindfulness and healing from unhealed parents. Okay. You are going to see me look away from the screen because I have a plethora of notes here for us to talk through. I'll give you just a few ground things, and then we're going to talk about 3 steps to take and to initiate the healing from unhealed parents. Okay. Um, Doctor, is it? I'm gonna try. Daedalus? Daedalus? Not sure. But thank you so much. uh, it's funny that you say human resource vibe. My background's in recruiting, so yes, most definitely. Hi, James. Welcome in. Okay, so let's dive in. Um, a few things to remember when thinking, or a few things to keep in mind, right? When thinking about healing from unhealed parents, a lot of us were raised by people and humans, right, that did the best they could, right? They could only give you what they had, and some of our parents didn't have a lot, right? And even if their intentions were were good intentions or bad intentions, both intentions still may have created some harm, right? So this live isn't necessarily about us talking or playing blame game, right? This is more so us finding a means to become more aware so we can choose differently when it comes to our own actions and behaviors. All right. It's about taking the cards that we were dealt, right? Looking at those cards and taking out the cards that are not helpful and going back to the deck and replacing those cards with cards that are helpful. Okay. That's really what the mindful side of walking through unhealed parents and what we can do from those things. That's really what this live is going to be about. Okay. This isn't about blaming our parents. It's not about judging them. It's not about condemning them. It's not about any of that. It's more so of getting an understanding of where we are today and being able to make changes from what we see. Okay. Now, granted, I'm not dismissing what some of our parents have done, right? Some of our parents have done some crazy crap. All right. Things that we should not accept, things that are difficult to even talk about or think about. Some of it is just gruesome. There is, abuse. There's so many different things that people have experienced. So I don't want to dismiss that. But what I want to encourage you to do is think about how it's impacting you now and what you can do about that to make the changes to create a better sense of life and well-being, and get a good understanding of what those behaviors that you're doing now that are helpful and those behaviors that you're doing now that are not helpful. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because I don't want to get into the cycle of blaming or the cycle of replaying what's happened and all of that, because that can create um, a mental space that needs to have direct support with from a clinician. And since I'm not your clinician, a new disclaimer I need to make sure that I say, because since I'm not your clinician, I don't want us to go down that road, right? So those are just all my disclaimers, y'all. So keep in mind, our parents are human. Okay, our parents can only give us what they have, and sometimes what they have isn't much. Okay. And as an adult, their impact on how you operate now is most important to prioritize. Okay, their influence can be more impactful than you think, and so doing this exploration, I would say, or discovery, can bring up some emotions that are more difficult. So I do encourage you all, if you do not have a therapist and this is difficult for you to navigate, please seek out a therapist for this, because it's not easy. And then when thinking about parents, I have them kind of like separated in different buckets, because some people may have more strenuous impacts than others. So you have parents you know and were and are currently in your life, right? You have parents you know but left your life at a certain point, whether it be through death or their own choices, right? Then you have parents you know but weren't in your life at all. And then you have parents you don't know at all, right? So based off of those buckets, that's how you want to think about the questions. So as we go through the 3 steps, there's going to be several questions that I will have you ask yourself, and you can do it now. You can just write it down to do it later. It's something that you can just think about. Or if it's something that you feel is too difficult to walk through yourself, again, I suggest walking through with the therapist. Okay, so when thinking about in a mindful way and how to initiate um, healing from an unhealed parent, is one, notice how their influence impacts you today and name it. Give it a name. It's going to take a lot of honesty. This may take a lot of time. This may take a lot of reflection, but it starts with noticing. It starts with awareness. It starts to really think about how their influence is impacting and still causing some difficulty for you today, right? So, questions you can ask yourself: what patterns do my parents have that I currently emulate? what patterns do my parents have that I currently emulate? Okay. As a child, you don't necessarily follow what your parents have taught you. You follow what your parents do, right? So if there's anything that you can think of that is like, okay, this is something that my parent does, this is something that I also do. Okay. So yes, what patterns do they have that you emulate? Next question: where do you see their impact and how you think and how you react or move through life? Okay, so this is taking the first question and giving it a little bit more detail. How do you see their impact and how you think, react, or move through life? All right. And then the third question here is: in what ways have their influence impacted your core beliefs? So, your core beliefs are: how do you see the world? How do you see others? And how do you see yourself? Okay, so I'm gonna say that again. In what ways have their influence impacted your core beliefs? How do you see the world? How do you see others? And how do you see yourself? All right. So when you're thinking about this, you want to think about behaviors, and it's not something that you got to go too deep on, right? To start, even if it's you want to think about, and you can think about the good things and the bad. It's not even about thinking about good and bad. It's just thinking about what comes up for you, those first things, those initial thoughts that come to your mind, and writing those down, right? So, for example, maybe people pleasing, right? You may have emulated some of their spending habits, your sense of responsibility for other people's emotions, your fear of disappointment, difficulty trusting or earning love or feeling like you have to earn love, shutting down, avoiding, hyper independence versus codependence, validation seeking, self worth concerns, addictions, perfectionism, right? So many things. Think about how your parents' work ethic, right? Think about how they interacted with people, right? All of the things that come up for you that you find yourself emulating, whether that be behaviors, actions, core beliefs, or even just things that you have learned or have been conditioned in, think about those things and write those down. All right. Notice how their influence impacts you today and name it. Give it a name. What is happening? What exactly is there? Now, if you have difficulty with number one, that's okay. You may have that difficulty, right? Again, this may be something you have to work through in therapy. So that's number one. Let me know if y'all have any questions. I hope this is helpful, y'all, and giving y'all some insight. Let me know in the comments. Okay, that was number one. Number two, pause and begin to separate the behavior from the person. I'll say that again. Pause and begin to separate the behavior from the person. So begin to see the pattern without attaching it to your worth or the worth of your parents. Okay. Separate what you learned from who you learned it from. So asking the question is this still serving me? So is people pleasing in the people pleasing that I do now, is that still serving me, right? Is that benefiting me or is that harming me? Is this behavior causing me harm spiritually, physically, or emotionally? Right? So you're taking all of what you named and you're just throwing it in this question. Is blank serving me? Is it helpful? Right? Um, Additional questions you can ask here is: does this protect me or limit me? Is this who I am or what I learned? What did this help me cope with growing up? Is it still helpful? Because a lot of times those actions, especially the ones that I listed, are coping mechanisms or things that you do to provide yourself some sense of relief. So, what did this help me cope with growing up? Is it still helpful? And then, what felt unsafe that made this necessary? And do I still feel unsafe? Okay. So, what felt unsafe that made this necessary? And do I still feel unsafe? And I'll take that a step further. If you still feel unsafe, ask yourself why. Okay. So, those are loaded questions. So, I'm going to go back through them. This is in number two, pause and begin to separate the behavior from the person. Ask yourself, is this still serving me? Is this behavior causing me harm spiritually, physically, or emotionally? Does this protect me or limit me? Is this who I am or just what I learned? What did this help me cope with growing up? Is it still helpful? And what felt unsafe that made this necessary? Do I still feel unsafe? Okay. So if we're going back to the examples that we had ways that it may patterns that may show up as people pleasing, spending habits, emotional responsibility, fear of disappointment, difficulty trusting or earning love, shutting down or avoidance, hyper independence or codependence, validation seeking, self worth concerns, addiction, perfectionism. Again, these are examples. That's like 10. There's like 50,000. Okay. So there's so many different things that could come up. So just based off of those examples, let's pick, say, validation seeking, right? So if we take validation seeking, is this still is this still serving me, right? Is this behavior causing me harm spiritually, physically, or emotionally? Validation seeking can be very spiritually, physically, and emotionally taxing. All right. Because if you're not getting the validation that you're looking for, you're consistently in that mode of looking for validation from someone. And when you don't get it, then you feel a sense of emptiness, or could feel a sense of emptiness or depletion or exhaustion, right? Because of the fact that you're doing all of these things to try to get validation from someone, and they're not giving it to you, or they're not giving it to you in a way that you want to receive it, and because of that it's showing up spiritually, physically, and emotionally, and it's causing harm, right? So thinking about a validation seeking, does this protect me or limit me, right? Asking that question, is this actually protecting me? Is this something that I actually need? Or is it actually limiting me? Is it slowing me down? Is it causing me more harm than not? Is self that validation, is this who I am? Or is this just something that I learned, right? And seeking validation can be just something that you learn. It can just be something that you maybe whether it be in school, or maybe and it kind of transferred over into the workforce, or maybe it was at home and it's now transferring into your relationship or your marriage or whatever. So it can show up in many different ways, but it can be just something that you learn, not necessarily who you are as a person. And sometimes we mistake that trauma as a personality trait when it's really just trauma showing up consistently, if that makes sense. Um, what did this help me cope with growing up? Self validation or seeking validation is definitely a coping mechanism. It's a way for you're not able to necessarily trust your own um, self when it comes to validation internally. So you consistently try to grab it from other spaces and other places. And it's really a self worth concern, right? Um, and what felt unsafe that made this necessary, right? When it comes to seeking validation, what made what felt unsafe is probably not getting validated at home, right? So you weren't validated, whether it be from parents or from whoever, your caregiver, and that in itself has returned to a need, an immense need for validation from others as an adult, right? So that's how you would apply it to the questions. I hope this is helpful. That was number two, y'all. Um, okay. All right, Dark Soul School guy. All right, I got it. Thank you. That was number two. So number one was notice how their influence impacts you today and name it. Number two, pause and begin to separate the behavior from the person. All right. Number three, choose a next step. What do I need? What would a healthier response look like for me? Okay. So saying that again, choose a next step. What do I need? What would a healthier response look like for me? So again, this is about getting caught up in blaming, right? This is more so thinking about what we can't control and what we can control. So you can't necessarily control what happens to you, especially as a child, right? But you can control your healing and you can control that initiating that process. So choosing a next step isn't necessarily about confronting, right? It's not about going and having that conversation. If you want to have that conversation, that's in the list, but it's not always about that, especially as an adult. Okay, so it's not about getting caught in that. Some of the things you want to think about is one, reframing some of the distorted beliefs you learned or were conditioned to have, right? Whatever that may look like. You may have been conditioned to people please, or may have been conditioned to think about a group of people a certain way, or you may have been conditioned to look at yourself a certain way. This is the beginning of reframing those distorted beliefs and starting to initiate ways for you to make a change, right? Changes are small steps. They don't have to be these big, drastic things. It can be just as simple as setting a boundary with a loved one, or it can be just as simple as journaling. So that way you're able to really take a look at what your beliefs are and start to unlearn or teach yourself to think differently, right? So it could be as simple as journaling. What do I want to keep that I've learned from my parents, and what am I ready to release, right? Maybe having a T shape on a sheet, and on one side, like, this is what I've learned, or maybe it'll be threes. Yeah, probably be like separating into threes. But putting down what I learned and then dropping in buckets. Okay, what I want to keep, what I want to release. It could be as simple as that, you guys. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Um, okay, and then also, like I said, speaking to your parents about these things can be healing, but I caution you with that, right? Because this can sometimes make things worse if you're attempting to have these conversations, especially without there being a third party, a clinician, maybe not group therapy, maybe doing family therapy or something along those lines. So I would say, depending on what it is and your relationship that you have with your parent right now, that's an option. But I always suggest finding support with that before doing so. Some of you guys may have really great relationships with your parents, and you can have those conversations. It's not a big deal. But I always say this is on a case by case basis. I'll say it that way. Okay. Um, and then let's see here. I lost my spot. All right. Yes. Okay. So when it comes to thinking about this, it's more so, is there a sense of you wanting to reconcile, if you are wanting access or they want access to you, and maybe setting boundaries with them. And that's the type of conversation you have to have. It could be writing a letter, it could be all of these different things. It can look so many different ways. And if you have a specific situation and you want to, drop it in the comments after the live, feel free. I can think of some different options, but you really want to, if you do go that route, you really want to know and understand what you're trying to accomplish by having that conversation. And in understanding what you're trying to accomplish, then determine how you want to approach it and whether you need support in it. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Another space in number three, practicing some levels of acceptance. Now, when I say acceptance, that doesn't mean what happened to you was okay. All right. It doesn't mean that that you are condoning, what was happening. It doesn't mean I'm not asking you to dismiss what happened, right? It means to see it more clearly, right? So it's about accepting what is. So I have the space to decide what I need, right? Because there's a lot of things that happen that you can't change, right? And spending a lot of time focused on that can create a sense of frustration, and replaying those things over and over and over again can bring up the emotions as if they just first happened. And you don't want to have yourself spiral, especially if you don't have therapy support, right? So it's about accepting what is. So I have the space to decide what I need. Acceptance doesn't mean no boundaries, and it doesn't mean that they now have access to you. It just means I have come to terms with how I was treated, and it means you're no longer waiting for them to become someone they may never be. Okay. Oftentimes we people hold out hope for them to be different and for them to change. I'm not saying that they won't, but that hope is what creates the internal conflict. And there's some level of acceptance of saying, this is who my mom or this is who my dad is, and I'm allow them to be who they are. Okay. Because sometimes as adult children, we get caught up in wanting to change them, and you can't change them, right? You can influence their change. You can give them options. You can tell them what they can and can do, or they can try this or they can try that. You can give them advice. You can tell them or talk to them and what you want from them or what you're looking for from them. But when we go down that route, that creates a sense of, I don't want to say hope, because you can still have hope and faith in your parent. I don't want to say that. But there is a part of us that has to accept where they are right now. Okay. And in that acceptance, that gives you the space to handle your healing and the processing that you have to do on your side. Okay. So questions you can ask yourself here: what am I still hoping they will give me? What am I still hoping they will give me? The next question you can ask yourself is that something they are able to give? Based off of what you know, right? This is your parent. Based off of what you know, is that something they're able to give me? Okay. And then following up with the question of, what do I need to give myself instead? Or what can I give myself instead? All right. Whether that be your own internal validation, your own internal confidence building, whether that be your own reframing of how you see yourself and how you view yourself or how you see the world, right? Um, just thinking about all of those things again. And then also thinking, hey, like if I make these changes, I'm an adult, I'm not going to get in trouble. Because sometimes we kind of internally feel like, I'm going to get in trouble. You may here and there, depending on different cultures. There are some cultures that are retaliatory, right? They will retaliate in certain situations. Like I said, I won't push on that. I know that there's a lot that goes into that. But understanding what you can give yourself instead is a better focus than trying to push and pull on what you want them to give you. Okay. Now, doesn't mean that you can't voice it. It doesn't mean that you can't have those conversations. It doesn't mean that you can't set those boundaries. It doesn't mean that you can't even require it, right? Because there are certain situations where it's like, okay, I require this right now in my life from everyone in my life, including my parent. I honor my parent, but you can honor them and not that they not have access. You can honor them and not be in a space of reconciliation, right? There is some levels of protection that you have to put within yourself, even when it comes to your parents. Okay, I know this might be hard, y'all. Again, if this is a hard, difficult situation, or you're having a tough time even getting through like the questions, that may be an indicator that you'll need support with therapy. Okay. Also, where we at? We're still in section 3, and this is the last one, y'all. Practice self-compassion and replace self-criticism with curiosity. I'll say that again. Practice self-compassion and replace self-criticism with curiosity. So what did I need in those moments that I didn't receive? Okay. Can I offer myself understanding instead of judgment? If this was a younger version of me, what would I say to them, right? If this is somebody that if this was a friend, if this was, someone else, what, or even just speaking to yourself, or if there was a younger version to you, what would you say? And how can I be gentler with myself in the now? How can I be gentler with myself in the now? Because at the end of the day, replacing criticism of self with curiosity can make all the difference. And that's what self-compassion is instead of being judgmental and condemning yourself, it's okay, well, why do I think that way? What is it about my past that has created this sense of feeling about myself or about other people? So the more critical you get of yourself, just replace that with curiosity, right? That's how you initiate self-compassion. All right, I hope this was helpful, y'all. Again, I've said this throughout the live. Consider therapy if you have experienced complex trauma associated with your parents. Okay, because this work, I made it sound simple, but it's not that simple. I know that there are a lot of us that have experienced a lot of traumatic things. And again, do not want to dismiss that. So if you have experienced complex trauma like abuse, molestation, abandonment, if you were in foster care system, if you had a death of a parent at a young age, like all of those things can be very difficult to process alone. So if you do have any of that type of complex trauma in your background, consider therapy and working through this. But I know wanting to heal from unhealed, parents or just from very traumatic experiences is something that a lot of people are really thinking about right now. But I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's a lot more than this. This is the beginning. This is just a way to think about it from a mindfulness perspective. I'm going to leave you with a declaration that you can say, and feel free to, oh, typo. Feel free to change this around however you wish to, or create more affirmations from it. But the declaration says, I break cycles with awareness, with intention, and with grace. What I learned is not all that I am and has no say on who I become. I'll say that again. I break cycles with awareness, with intention, and with grace. What I learned is not all that I am and has no say on who I become. All right, I'll say that one last time. I break cycles with awareness, with intention, and with grace. What I learned is not all that I am and has no say on who I become. You have say. Just know that you have say on who you become. And your say starts with that compassion and curiosity and really getting a good understanding of how you show up in the world and how you want to show up in the world and where those differences and where that incongruence is. And a lot of that stems from not all, but a lot of it stems from how we were raised and how we were conditioned and how we were taught, whether that be taught verbally or just taught in just what we saw, right? A lot of times we were taught things just based off of what we saw, not necessarily what our parents physically taught us. So when you're thinking about all of these questions, think about all of the things that you witnessed as well. Okay? I hope this was helpful, y'all. If you have any questions, definitely let me know down in the comments. I appreciate your time tonight. We are back live next Monday. Yes, next Monday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And next week, I feel like the other topic we had was a good one still that was had a lot of votes. Let me see. Just a second. Um Yeah, the other one was breaking people pleasing habits, which a good amount of people voted for. So we can talk about that next week. And then I think that last weekend in April, heading into May, you're welcome, Hiru. That last weekend heading into May, I have a conference that I'll be at. So I'll probably skip that week, but then pick up the following week. So y'all all have a great rest of your night. It's good to see you all again. If there's any questions again, let me know in the comments. Bye.